As part of our Commitment 2016 election coverage, WGAL is covering all of the races that impact the Susquehanna Valley, from the presidential contest to state and local races. It's our commitment to make you a more informed voter. I'm joined now by the candidates running for the 104th Legislative District in the Pennsylvania House of Representatives. The district covers much of northern Dauphin County, some of Harrisburg suburbs, and a small portion of western Lebanon County. The candidates are from left to right: Jody Rybarczyk, the commissioner of Susquehanna Township and Democratic challenger, and Republican incumbent Sue Helm. Welcome to both of you. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having us.
Representative Helm, you proposed a bill that would prevent municipalities from enacting housing ordinances which restrict renting to college students. Why did you feel that was important?
Well, actually, I had the Renters Association come to me and ask me to do that because in certain municipalities, you have to get a certificate to say that you can rent to students. And then what would happen, lots of times now students only go to school for 6 months and they have to work for another 6 months. And it wasn't working because the landlords were not abiding by the law by doing that. So that's why I did that, just to make it fair for everyone concerned. The bill didn't go through, and we're still working on it, but I bring that up next term, and try and get the bumps worked out of it. I mean, actually, when I had a hearing on it, I even saw some problems with it. Like we said, no more than, I think, 6 students to a house or something, and so many bedrooms. And it needs some improvement, and that's what we do. We have hearings on it, which we did, and then we go from there and try to make the bill better.
Do you see that as an issue in your district?
Not in my district, but one of the things I do see as an issue is one of the first comments that it was something brought forward by the rental property owners, and that's one of the reasons I'm running. I feel like we need a legislature who represents the people in the district, not only developers, not only realtors, not only rental property owners. So as a township official, I understand the importance of having certain regulations in place for property codes and things of that nature, but also we need people looking out for residents and not only big business.
Let's talk budget. The revenue that was estimated, what's coming in is less to Pennsylvania right at the moment. What do you think we have to do to increase revenue in the state, or do we?
Well, if we're going to talk about increasing revenue, one of the first things we have to do, again, is look at big business. We can't go to the average working class family and ask them for more money in taxes while we have the Delaware loophole in place, which basically enables big business to rent an office maybe no bigger than a broom closet in Delaware to avoid paying taxes in Pennsylvania. Also, we are not taxing the gas drillers. We're the only state that allows the drilling, that does not tax them. And if we're not going to tax those entities, we certainly can't go to hardworking, average middle-class folks and ask them to pay more in taxes. Another thing we can look at is pensions. Legislators get pensions. I have made a pledge that I will not accept a pension as a legislator. I will not accept pay raises, and I will not accept per diems. So if we're going to talk about cutting costs, we need to start there.
All right, well, we'll talk about the pension reform in just a moment,
Sure.
But what about revenue?
Well, it's no question we have a pension problem in the state of Pennsylvania. Next week we're going to talk about that,
right,
and hopefully vote on it. But we need revenue coming into the state, because when we do the budget next year, which I am on appropriations, we have a real problem coming up. But I'm also on the gaming committee. And the last 2 years, we've had 55 hearings on how we can do gaming better in Pennsylvania. And internet gambling, it's talked about, do not have it regulated in Pennsylvania. People are going to other states, spending money there. And it's important that we vote on that. Hopefully we do that next week too, because we have a bill coming up to regulate internet
So is that
gambling.
something you support, internet gaming?
Absolutely, absolutely, because right now we need the protections for the people in the state, that they're just not sitting at home doing something and being illegal, where we can bring the revenue into Pennsylvania and make it work for us.
Susan, if I may respond to that. Another thing with our budget is we cannot balance the budget on sin taxes. That did not work this time. For instance, gaming, tobacco, alcohol. We cannot balance the budget on that. Whether you believe it's good or not to tax internet gambling, it didn't work. They had counted on much more money to come in, and this did not pan out. So that's why we're in the situation we're in now, part of the reason.
Well, part of it didn't pan out because we didn't pass the legislation to have internet gambling.
But she's saying it's not bringing in as much money as was estimated.
Licenses,
yeah, the
yes, they did not sell as expected.
Well, let's talk a little more about pension reform. What do you think has to be done to help the underfunded pension in Pennsylvania?
Well, again, I've pledged not to take a pension, and I think that these positions were intended to be public servants, not something where legislators can line their pockets. So I would work full-time without a pension, and I think that's something that legislators should do. They should not take a pension, and that will help there. As far as the pension crisis, some of the proposals I've seen, the people who've designed them admitted that they may not save any money. If we're going to look at saving money on the pensions, I think we need to look at the Wall Street bankers that are making money off managing the pension funds. Now, that's a good place to cut expenses.
Pennsylvania's paying high fees, is what you're talking about.
Yes,
for
yes,
the pension fund.
exactly. Rather than taking away from the hardworking folks, making average salaries, we need to look at the big bankers that are making excuse me, money on these pensions.
Representative Helm, how do we solve the pension problem?
It's not only the legislators. I mean, we do get a pension, no question about that, but there's other problems out there too. And we have a bill coming up next week, as I mentioned, and it's for new employees, because I don't think the people that are in the House now, or the teachers, that we can cut their pension. We promised them everything, and that's the way we're going to follow through. But this bill has to do with new employees. They will know what they're going to get when they come and apply for a job, what their pension would be when they retire. So
and this would be more of a 401k type of plan.
Exactly, that's what we're looking at. And even the governor says that he will sign it. And
that's something you support?
I support it. I'm not saying everybody in the legislature does at this point, so it's going to be a real big debate next week. So I ask people to tune in and watch us and see how it goes, but I absolutely support it. I think we have to start with the new employees and then go from there. All
right, very good. Well, thank you both for joining us. We appreciate it, and good luck on Election Day. And we thank them both for joining us. Election Day is November 8th in Pennsylvania. Be sure to tune in to WGAL.com. There you will find more information on other races that we're following that you'll only find online.